and people like us coming in as as a foreigner. So if we think that we're equal to them, I think we're probably just deceiving ourselves.
Hello and welcome back to Sòrò, sókè. This is a podcast created to learn, understand, and demystify life in Africa and African lives. Thank you so much for tuning back in. We are celebrating episode number 10. Whoop, 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 whoop. Thank you so much for listening and for tuning in. If this is your first episode, thank you for being here. If this is your second, thank you for joining back again. It really does mean a lot. People have been saying positive feedback, and cause like literally, I just thought of this, and it's hard to kind of like put what you've taught off out there, and it being accepted and appreciated. So it does mean a lot. So if you do have any feedback, let me know, which is going into my second ask. Please subscribe, share, like, whatever you're listening to this podcast. Yeah, I just want to get more and more guests on, and I really have big plans for this podcast. So I do need your support. Okay, let's get into the episode. If you're living in the UK, you've probably heard and seen a lot in the news lately regarding the protests from the far right groups after a horrific stabbing of 3 children in Southport on the 29th of July. And it's been a very sad, scary, unpredictable, but also predictable time. It's kind of like just a whirlwind of emotion. And just talking about immigrations, migrants, refugees, asylum seeker, and the whole lot is usually very polarizing topic, and people usually either or, and it can get very emotional. So today, myself and my guests don't necessarily agree on everything, which is good. I purposely wanted to have this conversation with someone that doesn't have exactly the same views as myself, because it's very easy to get into an echo chamber where we're just agreeing and saying the same thing continuously over and over again, and your thinking does not develop or it doesn't increase to understand like other people's viewpoint. Now, at the end of this conversation, I might still not agree with what my guest is saying or necessarily understand it. However, I think it was important for me to have this conversation with my guest, to have a constructive conversation, really, and to understand, I guess, other people's viewpoint. Um, yes, so that's all, and I will let you enjoy it. Please, Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast. My name is Sam Adewumi. I'm a father. I'm a Nigerian by birth, British by marriage and naturalization. I'm a father of three. I currently run my own limited company doing air freighting from the UK, Europe, and into Africa.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining today. So let's just delve right in. What are your thoughts and feeling about the current events that have gone on?
Um, I think the scenes were disgraceful. Obviously with the wanton destruction of properties and the violence that we've seen on the streets of the UK. I mean, from the north all the way to the south. I think it's disgraceful. I won't condone violence in any way, shape, or form. As a person, but however, people do have a reason to protest. It's within their fundamental human rights to protest what I wouldn't subscribe to, obviously, is the violence. So, but having said that, people do have ways of, venting their anger or their dissatisfaction about issues generally. Some of us are good when it comes to, using words and dialoguing, basically. Some people are just really not good with that. The only way they can vent their frustration in some cases is really when they go physical, and in some cases they go violent. And then also, of course, when people do sometimes feel that they haven't been heard properly, maybe at different forums, at different times in the past, maybe they've raised certain issues, and the people they've been talking to, they haven't taken time to listen to them. So sometimes the result of that could be this sort of violence that you would then see people, committing, and as a way of trying to, be heard and be noticed. So I think that sometimes happens. So I do understand that by virtue of my little experience. On the other hand, if you're asking me about why would I think that those who have been protesting over the last 2 to 3 weeks, why would they be protesting? Do they have any reasons why they would go out on the street and be protesting? I think I would probably say that from my standpoint, with what I've heard out there from some of the conversations that I've had with people, we know that there have been issues with uncontrolled immigration, which I think it's really been the crux of why those people who are protesting, why they are doing what they are doing, because obviously those protests have been mainly targeted at the level of immigration into the UK, and then also you have that. I don't think it's mainly targeted at those who have basically come into this country legally, and they're integrating very well, and they are also contributing to the development of the society, like people like myself, for instance, have done. I think people's angst has to do with a lot of people coming in illegally, and those who coming in to seek asylum, and they feel that they are not integrating very well. The level of the influx of those people, they are not they are becoming uncontrollable over the years, and they are having issues with the fact that social services is being affected. Things like the NHS waiting list, because you have many more people in the country. School spaces as well, because you have so many people in the country. So they have issues with that. And let's also remember that one of the reasons why the UK had voted, a few years ago, to leave the European Union, this Brexit thing, was primarily driven by the same issue around immigration and uncontrolled immigration. Let's put it that way. So I think it's more or less still the same thing that isn't really going away. And I think those who are coming out fighting, they probably think they haven't been heard, or they are not being heard, and that successive governments, they keep coming in promising that they will have a cap on immigration, and the reverse has been the case. Instead of it reducing, they feel it's been increasing also. And I think many of them, maybe rightfully so, are beginning to feel uncomfortable. They feel that the demography of their streets and neighborhoods and cities and towns, they are becoming they're changing by the time. So many of them think they can't recognize their streets anymore, because the faces they used to see maybe 10 15 years ago, they're not the faces they see again today. They have a lot of foreigners in their area. So I think it's human to actually feel sometimes that way. So I think that's what I think is probably driving that. But I do think, from my personal point of view, that they do have a point that they're trying to make.
Hmm. Do you feel like their voice are not being heard? By their, I mean like white British nationals.
I think they do think so, because I've been here for the last 24 years, making a life here. with my own experience, I think there are other places I've been to, in the West here, and I would probably say that UK is one of the most accommodating society that I have come across, in my years on earth. I think they are very accommodating. They are cautious people. They are very polite people. So they welcome foreigners. They've done that over so many generations of especially Africans coming into this country. So if they aren't accommodating, I don't think a lot of us will be here. I don't think we would have made life in this environment for however long we've been here for. I think that it's not because they're accommodating. I think they genuinely feel that, as I said earlier on, that the level of immigration into their country has seen a marked increase over the years. Even if I speak for myself as a black person living in the UK, I've assimilated as much as possible. So some of the places I've lived also, as an example, I'll give you an example. I used to live in Croydon. I lived in Croydon for I think about 17 years. And over those years, when we came in the early 2000s, the demography of those areas, you will hardly see a lot of black people. If I can speak for my ethnicity. But if you look over the last 10, 15, 20 years, even you yourself as a black person, you will notice that demography seems to have changed. And some of those demographics seems to have changed in such a way that even you yourself, sometimes you begin to feel slightly uncomfortable about it. And I know this may sound ironical because, of course, I'm black myself, but I'm looking at the environment I live and I'm seeing that same influx and I can see it. So if I can feel that way sometimes, then you can then think how much more those who are, native British, those who are born and bred there, who, generationally this is their land. How would they be feeling? So I think because they are seeing those demographic changes, they can't see the difference. So that's probably the reason why they felt they haven't been heard.
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel uncomfortable with the demographic changes?
I think this is human. When people naturally have a tendency to want to feel comfortable in wherever they think is their cradle. When I say cradle, I mean, where your generations are born and they've been born and they are bred. So if we take, for instance, I have a British passport now, so I'm British by marriage and naturalization. But that necessarily doesn't mean, legally speaking, it means I'm British. So I'm as good as somebody who is Caucasian, who is a natural breed, because we're both British by nationality. But all the same, I don't think culturally, I don't think we're equal. If I feel that we're equal in terms of not just our value system, but mainly our cultural orientation, our sensibilities. Let me put it this way: if I ever feel that we're equal, then I might be deceiving myself because we're not equal and we can never be equal because there's always that difference. And that is what makes the difference sometimes. That makes people who are not naturally of a particular environment, why they feel that they want to jealously guard their way of life, their cultural identity, and they feel they feel a better sense of ownership than people like us who migrated into this environment will feel, even though we might be British as well legally. You understand what I'm trying to say? So, and when such people over time begin to feel that they are becoming outnumbered in their natural habitats, which is where God has placed them naturally by birth and their generations, naturally there's a pushback that brings from them. So it's just a natural thing. And I could give you a very good example, even from where I come from. I'm Nigerian and from the southwest. So for instance, I got to a point where in Lagos, as an example, if I can use that example, Yorubas of the southwest, predominantly in Lagos, began to feel uncomfortable with a particular tribe, because they feel that those tribes were trying to claim equality with them on the level of cultural and social ownership of where they feel is their own natural environment. And then there was a pushback when it comes to that. So if that is happening and you see a lot of that even happening in Africa. So if that is happening in Africa, where we all look the same in a way, and our culture, it's almost similar. So how much more when you then have a situation between those who are Caucasians, and those who are Black Africans or Asians, as the case may be. So you will always have that. And I think sometimes if we don't face the reality of that and understand that that is true of every society, then I don't think we're really being candid ourselves as ethnic people. So that's just my view.
So I wanted to ask, so you've mentioned two things. So you said you think you will never be equal, basically compared to a white British person, but you've also said that you have assimilated as much as you can. So my question is, why have you assimilated yourself to blend with the culture if you think you will never be equal?
I think I think it's a given. If you migrate into an environment, in order for you have dreams, you have aspirations of things you would love to do. And I think it's automatically a given that you've got to do a great deal of assimilation, and acculturation if you're going to have the kind of opportunities that you really want to have in such environments. So I mean, for instance, if you come into the UK as an example and you don't, study further, don't mingle with the natural people of the environment, the Caucasians, learn to eat the kind of food they eat, learn to socialize with them, go to the places they go to as well, and do some of the things that they do, which obviously these things are good things. So, and in some cases, if you don't speak their language, learn their language. I think if you don't do that, that will automatically limit your level of opportunities that you will have. So for somebody like me coming in years ago, I think that became something automatic that I knew I had to do. So, and that has nothing to do with me having that understanding that even though I may, do the things they do, I may mingle with them, I may do the kind of jobs they do, and I may even hold a British passport. It doesn't necessarily mean that there are certain things that they have that I will have. Let me put it that way. They have a generation. They have generations behind them in this society. That's what makes the difference. They own the environment. Let's face it. So, as opposed to somebody who is an immigrant coming in from another culture into this culture, so you're always going to have that. We know that they talk about equalities of opportunities, but even with that, equalities of opportunity that you have legally, as somebody who is not a natural bridge, you will still face issues around institutional racism. When it comes to attaining those opportunities. And those are realities, not necessarily because you are not assimilating and acculturating as much as you can, but there's always just going to be that difference between somebody who has generations behind them as a natural British and people like us coming in as, as a foreigner. So if we think that we're equal to them, I think we're probably just deceiving ourselves. I don't think it's not necessarily, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't see that something negative from their part. I think it's just something that I think we must face as a reality.
Okay. Yeah, that's just a point. I think I also wanted to kind of go back into some of the first points that you mentioned on how you can see the demographic changing even from where you live. Do you think we have an migration problem, or do you think it's actually proportionate to our population, to the UK population, the amount of jobs, etc.?
I don't think I don't think job is the issue. When you look at in proportion of the if you look at the population of the UK, probably a little less than 70 million people. I think the population of of those of us who are migrants, whether we've been here for 56 years or more or less, I think we're still low or little in comparison to the population of the natural breeds. Let's put it that way. So that's one. Two, I think the issue of they're taking their job, they are coming in, oh, they are taking our jobs, we don't have jobs. I think that's a loads of rubbish. I don't think that's really the issue. As we speak, I think there's still probably about almost a million vacancies in the whole of the UK that hasn't been filled yet. So if you're skilled and you're well qualified, you will get a job. Whether you're a foreigner legally coming into this country, or whether you are a natural born Brit, you will still get jobs. So I don't think it's about the job, coming and getting the jobs. I think what it is, if I come back to the issue of the demography, is the fact that the level of immigration that we have now, especially in the last 10 years, as I have seen myself, somebody that's been there for quite a while, I think it does look as if the increments on a periodic basis, I think, has become exponential. So the numbers is increasing too fast. I think that's what is making the natural people of the land, notice that there are differences in the demography of their environment. I think what is driving this is the number of people coming in, not just legally, but also people coming in to seek asylum. So I think it's being driven by both. So, and as I said again, I don't think that is jeopardizing British jobs, as in those who are naturally born and bred there. I don't think that's the issue, because if that is the issue, you probably wouldn't have almost a million job vacancies in the UK that hasn't been filled. So I think it's beyond that. And I think even the pressure that you have on hospital spaces, school spaces, I think that has also seen a reduction due to Brexit. So those who were putting a lot of pressure on that, who used to be those who are in the European Union, who had free exit and entry into the UK, and they don't have to wait for a number of months or years before they can get school spaces for their children. That has changed now with Brexit. A lot of those people who are Eastern Europeans and other the Europeans, they've gone back into mainland Europe. So I think what we're having now is really more of the numbers that are coming in, too many, too quickly.
So so you think actually the effect of them, the issue is not the fact that they're here necessarily and that the demographic is changing. So you're saying the issue is actually how many they're coming in a specific time frame.
Yeah, which is obviously what feeds into the reason why the demography is changing rapidly. Because, of course, if you're having many people coming in over a shorter period of time than what they used to experience over the years. I mean, there are verifiable statistics out there when they talked about the level of immigration since I think since 1997. That's the statistics. And they've talked about how gradually over a period of years that has seen a marked increase year in, year out since 1997. So they're saying that with the statistics that they are banding around, which I think are genuine statistics out there, they're saying that the level of immigration between 1970, for instance, and 1997, in comparison to the last 20-24 years, are seeing maybe about a 300 or 400% increase around your area. So it's just, I think that's what they said is driving this agitation, basically. So it's really more of too many, too much over a short period of time.
Do you agree with this? You think there's too many?
I think you can't. I mean, you can. I mean, I cannot speak for them as
Mhm.
somebody who is an immigrant myself. So, but I think they have a point. They must have a point based on those statistics. So I think it's very clear. So and you have some statistics that are banded around about certain cities, for instance, within the UK. And I think some of the examples that has been given, and of course, again, these are all in the public domain, of cities like maybe Bradford as an example, places like Bolton as an example, whereby the amount of the number of immigrants even dwarfed the number of the natural breed in some of those cities. So there are cities, of course, in the UK, not all cities and not many cities, where you have the number of so-called immigrants. When you put Asians together with Africans, Afro-Caribbeans together, in some of those cities they actually outnumber those who are Caucasians, who are British. So you have that. You have London as an example. Of course, we know London is a melting pot. We understand that. If you look at the
Yeah.
statistics here, they said now the the percentage of the Brits or Caucasians in London is about 37% of the population, of the entire population of London. So and of course in the year 2000 they said it was about 65%. In 1970 they said it was about 93%. So when you use London as an example, I think it sort of just brings the message home to a lot of them. So, and I think you can then, it's left to you to just make that judgment from your own point of view. If you're seeing things like that, I think those are some of the things that it's bringing those agitation from them. I think some are looking at they more or less are fearing a scenario where they become a minority in their own country. I think that's just the reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you ask me, do I agree with them on the basis of that? Of course, I will agree with them. I'm human, and I think these things are natural human instincts. They are natural human agitation. Nobody wants to be a minority in a place where you call your own land. Nobody wants that. Not even you as an African. Not even me as an African.
Okay, definitely like there's a lot more questions and points I would like to raise, but because of time,
Yeah.
we're gonna move to I think a point that you said in the forum that we were both part of. You said the quote this is affecting policing is being crippled by this. For instance, there are areas of predominantly Muslim populations in the UK that the police cannot enforce the rule of law, despite some of the atrocities being committed in some of these places. Do you mind elaborating on this point a little bit?
Well, I think it's if you're conversant with this public discourse on uncontrolled immigration, the people not natural people not wanting to be a minority in their own country, certain demography of their cities changing, places where you have more migrants than even the natural breeds of the land. So if you are conversant with all those uh, uh, public discourse around those issues, I think it's easier to actually answer the question. Basically, there was this grooming. I don't know whether it's something you heard about years ago. I think about 4 years ago, the report came out. I forgot the name of the person that shared the report. The girls in up north, a
Mhm.
gang of Asians, mainly Pakistani, British Muslims, were grooming underage girls, and for a number of years, I think over a period of about 7 years, and it was done so cleverly that the police couldn't properly investigate the issues, even though those issues were being raised by certain people locally, that for 7 years, this group of people were doing it, and because the police, we heard that because the police didn't want to be, termed as racist, so a lot of the things that they could have done to stop these atrocities from being committed by these people, they couldn't do them because they were, so and until the whole thing blew out of proportion completely before a panel was now investigative panel was set up, and then the whole thing now came to light, and the colossal failings of the police was then now became evident in that particular situation. So, and of course, some of those issues were raised. Some of those who are agitating presently, they raised some of those issues as one of the reasons why they have been complaining about uncontrolled immigration, basically, and issues around people who come into this environment. They don't assimilate, they don't acculturate, they still keep their culture, and they keep their way of life. They still do things the way they would do it from the culture out of which they've come out of, and they still come into the UK and they still continue to do things that way. So that particular incident showed that the way policing was done within that migrant enclave, if I can put it that way, wasn't as effective as it would have been if it was done in a white dominated. If something similar had happened in a white dominated environment, people felt that that would have been handled more effectively. The law would have come down harder because they wouldn't have other pseudo-cultural issues to deal with among this group of people. So those are things that, and of course, all these issues has to do with the other cultural things that sometimes police look at when it comes to policing, basically. And because they don't want to fall foul of that. They don't want to be accused of racism in a way, because all these things are very sensitive. So they tend to that affects their level of professionalism. Sometimes there are things that they would have done without asking questions and by following the law. But in some cases, when it comes to some ethnic issues, because they don't want to be tagged as racist, there are certain things they should do that they wouldn't do. And that was exactly what played out in the issue of the grooming gangs that I talked about earlier.
So, do you think regarding the male grooming kind of issue that happened? I know you said it was a while ago, so you might not exactly remember. But do you think that the fact that the police hadn't stopped this or intervened earlier was actually due to the police failing to understand or to interrogate key evidence rather than the fact that they were a Muslim Asian group? So, for example, if the key evidence were there and they were kind of witnessed and gathered, do you think that actually them not stepping up and investigating the situation is actually due to their own failing rather than the group?
I think it's I would probably think it's a bit of both. So I'm not I've worked very actively and competitively in the environment. So I know with the way the environment is very objective. It's all about objectivity. But I think in some cases, I think cultural issues do weigh in also when it comes to dealing with ethnic minorities. I've also seen that. And I think it's I think it's a good thing to do. It's a very cautious thing to do when you have tolerance for other people's culture. But I think there has to be a line. But I think a line has to be drawn where issues of crime comes into play. When crime is being committed, I don't think cultural issues needs to be put into consideration at all. Look at the issue of the protests. Almost 1,000 people have been arrested promptly, and people have been charged to court. Some have already been sentenced already. So and that's all been done within the space of how many weeks? Less than 2 weeks. That's all already been done. So I think that tells you that if the police wants to do their job without encumbrances, without trying to be politically correct, if I could put it that way, and they just want to be professional in their job, I think they would have. I think that that issue could have been resolved, quicker than it was.
I haven't personally heard of it, but after this, I'm definitely gonna do some research on it. But
Yeah.
I do think it's quite important for us to distinguish between people committing crimes and religious institutes or ethnicities committing crimes. Because oftentimes, even with this rise of this immigration issues, we try to link the person's religion or the person's ethnicity to the reason why they might have committed a crime. So that's why we should have controlled migration. But oftentimes, they could have been white British and still commit the same crime. And so, where do you go from there? Well, you can't really say anything after that, just because they were born here and their
Yeah.
generations have, like you mentioned. So, and I do think that actually people from different ethnic groups actually get targeted a lot more disproportionately targeted a lot more times than white British people. So even though they might not be want to be called racist, we actually, black or Asian people, ethnic minorities, get targeted a lot more by police.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Mm.
Of course, I as a black person, I, in my own experience, the issue of, you could tell that there are disproportionate issues that, in a way, sort of negatively affects, the ethnic minority in a way more than the natural breeds. Of course, that is there. That's number one. Of course, there's also the issue of institutional racism that is, of course, targeted at the ethnic also. Those are two realities. They are there. So, but it doesn't necessarily then mean that that other reality that we've been talking about doesn't also exist. It also does exist. And I think sometimes that's really more on a political level. And I don't think, I personally don't believe that, people should be think, or it should be thought of as a criminal, or the idea of thinking that a particular ethnic minority or a particular religion has a higher propensity to commit crime. I don't believe that. I don't think that is true of crime. I think crime is crime. In every society, in every nationality, in every group, as you have good eggs there, you're also going to have bad eggs there. So I don't think it's a factor of where somebody comes from, or what religion or religious persuasion they have. That's the reason why they're committing crime. No, I don't believe that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. On this podcast, we like to talk about kind of like action points or points to things that you think the listeners should do. Do you have any action points or takeaways that you would like to kind of like it to come across and for listeners to remember?
I just think, whether whether ethnic or natural breeds. I think in my experience, we've lived together in harmony, in peace. We both have things that we could learn from one another, and I think over so many years, I've been there here over 2 decades. I think we've seen that. Never have I ever seen this level of friction between the two group of people. So, and I think we just need to continue to maintain that the multi-ethnic harmony that we have, and choosing to see the best in one another, and not all this politically, how do I put it, motivated noise that is around us, that is trying to pit us to get against one another. I would think, I don't think we should allow that to happen. But I also think that the government also should be more sensitive, and that if there are agitations from certain, sectors or groups in the society, I think they should create that avenue to, have a conversation around these things. What I've seen is the idea of when there are differences of opinion, the idea of name calling, stigmatizing people because they are raising genuine opinions about issues, calling them racist, calling them Islamophobic, for instance, or anti-Semitic, for instance, where as the case may be, when people genuinely raise certain issues, I don't think that is helping the discourse at all. It is not. This idea of people, when people have a different opinion, people wanted to cancel them out, and saying, oh, you're saying these things because you're racist. If a white person says, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable because I think my environment is changing too rapidly, I'm seeing too many, foreign faces. Those are genuine concerns. They should be heard. They should be listened to. If there are things that could be done to ameliorate those factors, they should be considered and done. But the idea of saying, oh, he's racist because he's saying that, I don't think that will help this conversation, and it would surely not help the racial and the multi-ethnic harmony that we have all enjoyed in this country. And that's why this conversation that we're having is a very good one, because it's about being open and talking about things the way they are. So we should stop all these name callings and tagging of people and trying to cancel people out because we don't want to listen to them because their opinion is different from ours. It's not good. Not in this environment. We are in the first world. We're not in Africa. Even Africans are doing better than we're doing here. So I think Africans have even gone past that level. They talk about issues now more openly as we are doing. So that would be my advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It was very insightful conversation. And we're going to close it here. And thank you very much for listening. And again, thank you to you, Sam.
Yeah, wish you all the best in your journey, running this podcast.
Thank you very much.